Hey guys, welcome to this episode of the Trainer Feed. We are your hosts. My name is Angel Sanchez. We have Mr. David Bravo.
Hello.
And we have Mr. Jacques Delogere.
Hey, everybody.
On today's episode, we want to talk about range of motion and why it is important. So,
it's a myth.
Range of motion is a myth.
It's a myth.
ROM, or range of motion, is a way that people describe their I'm trying to describe range of motion without using range of motion, their joint capsular capacity.
Oh god.
Is that a fair? That's not too bad.
I'd say
you guys
so.
want to give it a whack? David, you seem like
Oh no shit.
Satisfactory. Range of motion define range of motion without saying range of motion.
Range of motion is the degree in which your limbs can move.
That's not bad. Well, so your range of motion, let's say you have a really inflexible shoulder, right? And your shoulder moves in flexion and shoot, I don't want to screw this up.
Want me to tell you the online definition?
No, you don't gotta worry about that.
Oh my
Fuck
bad.
Wikipedia. Abduction and adduction, right? So let's say flexion, extension, abduction, adduction. That's your shoulder. Let's say that. That is so you would describe it as having 2 degrees of freedom. Or your degrees of freedom would be 2 because you move in one plane. You move in 2 planes essentially. You just do one and then you do the other. Why I'm throwing that out there, I don't know. Maybe I just felt dumb about range of motion. I wanted to smart myself up. But what I wanted to talk about with regards to range of motion is I took a seminar this past weekend, or a weekend, because when this drops, it probably won't be chronologically correct. And one of the things they spoke about was how you should have a 1-to-1 ratio of your passive to active range of motion. So your passive range of motion, David, you want to give that a whack? Passive range of motion?
Passive range of motion is if Jacques was on the floor and we were testing out your range of motion, I would grab your arm and move it without you doing anything. Active would be me telling you, yo, Jacques, lift your arm up. And then I would assess your range of motion.
Right.
Am I correct or am I incorrect?
That's all good by me. Jacques, you give him the thumbs up, the arms up.
Yeah, the arms up.
That's active on your thumb's range of motion.
There you go. So they said like having a 1-to-1 ratio is key. However, it's not the case that most people have like 100%. It's not like 100 and 100, right? Like if you stretch somebody's hamstring, that's like the easiest stretch for people to describe and relate to. Like if somebody's pushing on your leg, you're lying down on your back and they're pushing on your leg and trying to get your leg to stretch out a little bit more, that is going to be a lot further than if you just do it actively. But they were making mention to how you want it to be as close as possible. And if, for example, somebody has 100 degrees of flexion in that limb, you want to try to articulate as much as 85 degrees of flexion, and classifying that in the umbrella of 1-to-1, which some mathematicians and statisticians were probably like frown upon because it's like, well, that does not equal that. But it's just, I think, a way to kind of categorize it without it being put under too much scrutiny. It's like it's pretty much 1-to-1. It's not necessarily, unless you get out the goniometer, like football. We also, a Super Bowl, they get out the sticks and they got to measure.
How they haven't changed that, I don't know. But
yeah, somebody was telling me, actually, a client of mine was telling me how they hate watching the sport because it seems like the rules change all the time. Like things aren't very clear and defined. And I thought about it. I was like, it's not necessarily wrong because like a lot of the plays that you see, they're just like, they'll throw a flag, but then it'll happen again and then they won't throw a flag. So it's kind of like
inconsistent. Yeah, it's inconsistent.
Yeah, exactly. Which, by the way, we never spoke about the Super Bowl, but
well, so it's a few weeks gone now, but I think that talking about the flags, it was an okay game, but the final drive, God, did their officials just completely...
That was wild. It's like the Rams had like eight tries. I don't know how many tries.
Yeah, so
they did.
one of the plays was a third down, and they got a fresh set of downs, and then they got another one. So they got technically 3 first downs in the red zone. I think maybe 4. So you're talking about eight or 9 plays, in the red zone, which in
it's freaking crazy. Anyway.
Stupid. But anyway.
Yeah, and then it discourages the players from actually playing, right? If you're gonna let them play, but I don't know.
They had them for most of the game, and then
it's true. But yeah.
But you were saying.
Yeah, speaking back to range of motion now, because we could talk about that too. But speaking back to range of motion, so I went through the seminar and we did a couple of assessments on different joints of the body and articulating at the hips, at the shoulders, at the spine. And, I noticed that it is pretty interesting to see when people don't have that one-to-one or they're not meeting the capacity, and it's like blatant, like how much they're not meeting the capacity of their mobility, right? So, or the capacity of their passive range of motion, where it almost seems like it's 50% of what they're passively doing. But I think that also lends itself to a couple of things. One thing that they spoke about was the central nervous system, and how, like, if you don't stimulate the body to kind of like get better at these exercises or these movements, you just won't do it naturally. And a lot of people just don't stretch, or they don't give their body enough time to like recover, and they just feel like if they just keep hammering their body, that you're just gonna keep being able to achieve the same range of motion without doing any stretching, and it's not a good thing. In fact, I'm trying to stress that on my clients, my existing clientele. I feel like every time we get a certification, you just want to kind of like crank it out on everybody just because you want to remember as much as possible. But there is a point there with like regards to stretching. And I think that I need to be able to do a better job at peppering in more mobility drills and more stretching exercises for the people who hate it because they don't do it. And then sooner or later, something's going to snap, because I'll move them, I'll stretch them. I don't stretch people like that anymore because, COVID kind of like took that out, and I was a little bit happy for it. I'm not going to lie. I don't want to be manhandling sweaty legs all day.
Oh, nah.
But then I have them stretch, and it's just like, they're just like rigid, and then they just fall. It's like, hold on to this limb, hold on to that limb, and they're just like, and they fall back. What about you guys? Do you guys pepper it into your programming at all? Do you have trouble peppering it in like me?
I would say, yeah, I still have that as an area opportunity. I think I do stress the stretching and mobility for improving ranges of motion is not something that, I mean, doing it twice a week is better than not doing it, but I try and explain it, or I use the analogy that your body takes the shape of the ranges of motion that your body lives in. So if you sit at a desk all the time, yes, no surprise your hips are tight because your fascia, everything around the hip joint just gets used to living in that sort of range. And I actually get this complaint from clients who start driving a lot and they only feel on the right leg, the right hip, because they do the gas pedal with the right leg if they're driving long periods of time. That said, I want to patch in the fact that when it comes to mobility, and I try and suggest to people, for example, in a squat, I use the example that a baby always has that range of motion because they can sit in that range, or they haven't had the stresses of life come in yet where they do have to sit at a desk for periods of time in a day. So I just tell them that it takes time. It's not, you're not going to get, when they see the results, they're happy. They're very satisfied.
Can you say that baby analogy again?
So you look at a baby, how a baby compared to an adult can sit into a deep squat and can just sit in that squat. So the point I make with someone when I'm explaining this is, well, a baby hasn't had the stresses of life. It's quite the same as an adult. One being, for example, I say stress, I mean like physical stress placed on the body, such as working 9 to 5, for example, at a desk. And assuming that that adult has sat at a desk all day, most of the day, is repeating that motion of just being in that position of hip flexion. Whereas a baby has had different movements, where, like, we all know the life of a baby is a lot easier than an adult, but I'm just using that's where the stress on the body is different, and that's where such ranges can be different. I mean, that's maybe an extreme example, but I like to use that example. Like, you have been able to do this when someone says, oh, I've never been able to do it, and I don't I don't like seeing someone perform an exercise in a manner I think is going to injure them. So I stop them straight away. And I think, for example, something such as the squat, have them hang out in a deep squat. And when they can start to do it, whether it's with a TRX, whether it's holding on the side of a squat rack, they can do it. And I use that as proof. I said, look, you can sit in that deep hip flexion. You just prove to yourself you can do it. Different circumstances because you're holding onto something, but I've said you have that range of motion right there. So it's proof that we're going to have you sit in it, walk on it. And I'm not taking that half squat for a final answer, like as a finished product. So that's kind of where I go on it. I mean, I feel a little less clued in for shoulder mobility just because I've not had so many issues or walked a few people on that. But when it comes to hip and knee and ankle, I think ankle is something I'm becoming way more familiar with as well, because with footwear, I look into that also. When I see someone's footwear in their sneakers and they're worn it inwards, or their feet are collapsed a certain way, so their arches are collapsed a certain way, I love taking people's shoes off now, not physically, but ask them to take their shoes off and seeing their squat. And 9 times, this guy's got to think about shoes, his sneakers, sneakerhead, take your sneakers off. But 9 times out of 10, and you guys may have had this too, where if you ask someone to take their sneakers off, let's say they're doing some form of squat, the difference in their squat from when they're in their sneakers to when they're barefoot is just night and day for like pretty much 9 times out of 10. And you could argue that, let's have them do all movements through there. I mean, I just think the squat's the most important one for that, possibly deadlifts. But that's my long-winded answer of Angel, where you asked us where we stood on this subject.
Listen, man, all I know is baby life is hard. They can't even digest without throwing up.
Well, and keep their head up, bro.
They can't even keep their head up. They're just rolling.
They're like, I'm building extra. Yeah.
They can't do anything. No, but yeah, I think you have a good point there. And David, go ahead. You want to say something?
I do some of the mobility stuff in the beginning, depending on what we're going to do that day. So if we're going to do squats and deadlifts or squats and presses, I have them really work on their ankle and their hips, and then work on their shoulder stability and mobility beforehand. Yeah. So we'll do like a banded ankle dorsiflexion stuff. We'll do some banded hip stretches, 90-90 boxes. And then we'll do maybe some, what can we call it? Face pulls, like light face pulls with press. So, all that stuff. We even, try to do some, maybe even some lat activation stuff for the bench press. We'll do that beforehand. After the workout, usually the client, one of my clients, they're like, I'm going to go stretch. I'm like, all right, cool. See you later. There are times where depending on if I know that they aren't the best stretchers and they're really looking to stretch, I would give them a couple of stretches they could do on their own. I do have the client here and there that like 80% of their love for training is the stretch at the end. So I'm just like, all right, let's go stretch.
Yeah, and they're like yes. They love that.
They're like, yes.
I haven't done that since COVID.
I haven't done that. Well, I have. I'm not doing that anymore.
I'm like, nah.
Yeah, and hopefully you have a massage table.
Because then the other thing is like you have to hold these stretches. Realistically, you'd have to hold them for longer than 2 minutes in order to get enough stimulus for the body to progress from a mobility standpoint, so you get more flexibility or range of motion. And sitting there for like 2 minutes, I mean, how many are you just going to do? One side, like one leg, you know what I mean? Because like you have like flexion, extension, abduction, internal rotation, external rotation. Like you're just going to sit there and work on somebody's hip for 15 minutes and then switch to the other hip.
I died when it'd be the hour and someone would ask for a stretch. I was like, the hour's up, man.
Oh, nah.
I got someone now. Like, what do you mean? I was like, someone else. I'm sorry.
I've had people that I'm stretching my client and then they're like walking by. Not even my clients. They're like, how long will you be here?
Yeah.
And I'm like,
because I want to do.
I look at my watch. I'm like, a minute, but not for you.
The people who use the massage beds to do a fucking glute bridge, oh my god, like you can do that anyway, man.
Well, I will say this because I trained a client that needed to use the massage table to do glute bridges. So one of the reasons why
Here we
people do
go.
this, I don't know why all the reasons why,
Stop
but one
it.
of the reasons is that people cannot get up from a supine position on the floor. They can't get into a standing position. So
So
when
is
you're
it
working on
Wow, I
like,
feel
mean when
bad
I
now.
have them do it? Like
well, if
I
you
just look
have
at
them
them.
do it, then
I'm
they
like
can
this.
do it.
I'm like this, and they're on the floor.
Yeah, because Keith's your dad. You're
They're
your
like-
second dad. You're doing the Keith.
They're
You're
like,
doing the baby
I
Keith.
can't get up.
No, so when you're working with special populations, sometimes geriatric groups, they can't get up from a supine position. So if you think about it realistically, like they'll never be on the floor unless they're in danger. So anything from like going to bed to sitting on the couch, you're still elevated, so you can swing around and drop your feet down and then go into a standing position. So that's why like working on the stretch mat sometimes, or working on the massage tables and doing glute bridges on the massage tables, or whatever you would do supine on the massage table, that's one of the reasons why. I don't know why everybody else does it.
So I take that back, especially with the geriatric population. Anyone else, you have no excuse. That's what I'll say.
You'll see
It's
David on
a great
the-
point
on the
made. And
mats.
you can see David just like doing glute bridges and
Yeah.
like hip openers on the massage table. But you
Sure.
all I'll say without going too far into this is we also know people would purposely come and do some BS stuff on the bench at 5:10 of the hour when they knew that's when clients are going to get stretched.
Yeah, I remember those days.
People
Mm.
do that on purpose.
Yeah, they used to
Yes,
do it
some
back
people
in the day.
some people would just do a quad stretch on the edge of the thing, be like,
That's
"Oh,
evil,
can I
bro.
just-"
There used to be fights. There was one time,
Mm.
damn, I remember this was a crazy incident. The client got mad at me because I fought back. I did the same thing they did last week. They did that. Essentially. They ran over to the stretching mat. They ran over to the stretch table. It's like silly shit. They ran over to the stretching table like 15 minutes before to finish out their core exercises to then get stretched by their trainer. Right? That's what they did.
Okay.
So then the next week when I saw them there, I did the same thing. And this person got so upset that they like told their trainer, and we knew each other, it was back at 76, so old days, and the good old days. And the trainer was like, oh, I don't even know. And then the client got so upset that they were like trying to physically move the table. And I had to tell the person, like, yo, like go downstairs, tell management, do whatever you got to do, but don't touch this table while somebody's on it. If you break a leg of the table, the person flies out. Like, what's wrong with you? And he said,
You
some
said
words
that to the
me.
other trainer's client.
Yeah, because that client and my client were kind of going back and forth. And then as a trainer, you kind of like take a back seat, let them do what they got to do, work it out. And then, and then he started trying to move the table. And I was like, oh, no, you're not moving the table.
Oh no.
Yeah, and I kind of felt like it was a little bit sexist too. Like I felt some of those vibes. Like my client was a female. He's a tall, obviously white male. Oh, white males only do that stuff. No, I was just kidding.
Pretty much.
Yeah, Jacques, what the fuck?
I'm not doing that stuff.
So, that was a little wild. So then I had to step in and tell him to just like, calm down, tell management, like call the cops, do whatever you got to do, but don't try to mess with the table. Anyway. But yeah, so assess range of motion. Make sure you got that 1-to-1. If you don't got it, try to work on it, fix it. 2 minutes plus per stretch. Try to hold it, sit in it, think about it. Because remember, the CNS plays a big role in how you're able to mobilize. And for a lot of people, they don't realize it. And they just, you'll do some stretches and you'll be like, oh my God, you made me touch my toes. I haven't touched my toes in 20 years. It's like, no, I like down-regulated your central nervous system, which allowed your body to go from your fight or flight hyperventilating state to rest and digest, and allowed you to actually relax into the stretch, which made you stretch a little bit more. And by the end of the night, you're going to go back to the way you were. So just remember to keep peppering it, keep hammering at home. And that's about it. Cool.
Preach.
Keep it short, sweet. You guys got anything else to say, or should we wrap it up?
Don't fight over massage table.
Listen, man, it's like COVID fighting over masks. Now it's like nobody wears masks now. So it's like, who you gonna be mad at? Anyway,
For real.
David's always mad.
Not always mad. I just
Dave
hate
was
people.
mad.
What grinds David's gears?
Well, not wearing a mask.
yo.
All right.
Don't even get me
Well,
started.
Yeah,
that's
we're
true.
not going to go down that road.
All right. Have a good one, guys. We'll catch you in the next one.
All right, guys.
Bye.
Be good.